So here's your core. And so you'll start in your starting area. You'll drive to the patient selection area, whether your sensor is on the bottom, on the top of your robot, or on an arm or whatever. You're going to look into those buckets with the robot, figure out what color. Once you know what color it is based on your sensor's outputs, you're going to go to the medication station and start collecting your medication. So your medication is going to be randomly placed, alternating colors throughout these rows here. I think the way it lays out is basically 24 of each color, if my memory serves me correctly. But basically, those dots on that table represent where the location of those nuts will be. Those nuts will, I'm giving them to you silver, but they will be painted the same color as the different patients. And this is also basically how the buckets will be hung up. So you'll go to the table, you'll pick up, you go to the station, the patient selection station, your color sensor will be activated. You'll determine which patient is yours, the red, the blue, the yellow. Once your operator understands what your robot is telling it, he'll go to the table and start picking up the proper colored medication. The medication will actually go onto a container that you are making from recycled plastic bottles or tin cans and painted white and red. So that will be part of your robot construction. So when your robot is complete, a portion of your robot is going to be some shaped container that will hold these nuts made out of either a plastic bottle or tin cans and painted white with a red cross. Your robot will earn 50 points for each piece of medication that is in the medication container, which is the piece on your robot at the end of the heat. Medication not in the medication container will not be counted. If it's stuck, if you have a claw, if it's stuck in your claw, it's not counted. Medication that falls on the floor cannot be picked up and reused. Unfortunately, if the heat ends and any of the wrong medication is in the robot's container, the team does not score any points because that's not a good thing to get the wrong medication. One of life's little lessons entwined here. So, any questions off of this event? Yes?
The buckets.
Yes.
Will they be randomly changed before each heat? So
Yes.
you don't automatically know, oh, that's the red bucket?
No, they'll be, we'll have a series of a dozen or 15 buckets off to the side, and they will be, after every heat, they will be, my initial concept is that they will be Velcroed to the bottom of a 2x4, which is what will stretch that diagonal, and that they will be then, the officials or my staff will change them after every heat.
They'll be the same color, right?
Yeah, it's going to be one red, one yellow, and one blue for every heat, but the positioning of them will be different.
Right, but in other words, there's only going to be one color out on as a specific heat, right?
No, 3 colors.
Oh, okay.
Each heat has 3 colors. You have to use your sensor to pick out which color.
Which one you want. You don't have to pick them all. Your robot goes and picks one.
Yeah, just picks one.
Red, and then I have to go get all the red nuts.
Right. When your driver gets out there, if he's closer to the middle bucket, he picks the middle bucket. If for some reason he feels lucky on the right, he goes to the right bucket, whatever they want.
So do you base the right color being in the bucket in the end on which bucket
Correct.
Another question about the collector. You said that a plastic bottle or a tin can, does it have to be a plastic bottle? A pail or something like that?
No, we're looking for a recycled component.
It should be a recyclable.
Yeah, so it should be something that will recycle. It doesn't have to stay in its form, depending upon the shape of your robot. If you need to cut a can, 2 or 3 cans into pieces to make something, that's fine. But the intent is we want to, try to incorporate a little recycling component. So, use something, and if you keep it as a straight can, that's fine too. But if you, cut up a couple of 2-liter soda bottles and make some shape that best fits your robot's function, that's fine as well.
Any size restriction on that?
No size restriction. As long as it's within, it's counted as part of the robot. So you can't build your robot to fit in the size constraints and then have a bucket on top of that. Yes?
Is there a limit for color sensor?
There's 2 color sensors available. There's 2 color sensors that we would like you to use. There's one that Testrix / Mindstorm / Legos offer, and there's one that the High Technic company offers that is compatible with those systems.
Maybe it's more than 3?
No. 1 sensor.
Only 1 sensor?
Yeah. Yes.
I've used these sensors, but are you allowed to use a light, bring your own ambient light to shine into the inverted, these cups, these blue cups?
I don't see a problem with that.
You might have to.
You might have to.
I don't see a problem with that. That's fine.
How will you know that our machine or a machine picks one color?
Because you went to the bucket.
But how will you know that you'll
Me
have to-
personally, or the official who's
The
watching the
official.
event?
The official watching?
Well, he's watching you go to the bucket.
All right. But we can't.
He knows.
He knows.
No, he doesn't know until it's over. The official doesn't know until it's over. I'm the official. I'm watching you run around the court. You go up and you go to the middle bucket, okay? And then you read that bucket, okay? We are going to have a mechanism that the official will use to indicate which bucket you read. He still doesn't know the color. Then, when your operator believes he knows the color, okay, let's say, you set your robot to ring a bell when he sees blue. So he puts the sensor under the bucket, and the bell rings. Your guy knows, oh, that's blue, because yellow turns on a light and red does something else, or there's a control back to the, don't forget, you're operating this off of a laptop in most cases, or in conjunction with a laptop. Maybe the signal just comes back to the laptop. That's fine as well too. However you guys decide to program that information back to the operator, whether it's physically or electronically, your operator knows that, okay, I went to the bright bucket, this bucket is showing as a yellow, now I gotta go pick the yellow medicine. And the official who's watching this, when he sees that you're there, that's what he will indicate which bucket you went. At the end of the heat, he'll go to the bucket and pull it off and can show everybody, okay, you got the yellow bucket, you picked up the yellow medicine, or he picks up the bucket and it's blue and you picked up all the yellow medicine. That's not good.
Do you think when the operator chooses the bucket, they should declare that they're choosing the left bucket?
I think, the robots are basically this big. The buckets are apart. My guess is that you're going to have whatever your arm structure is going to be, that's where the sensor is going to be, so you can put it up into the bucket, is my guess. Not telling you what you have to do or don't have to do, but I'm just guessing how this probably would work. So I think it's going to be very obvious to see where you read. Yes?
Can you use different sensors, like besides color, like motion?
No, just those.
Only one sensor?
One sensor, the one that's indicated, the one, you get your choice of either the Lego or the High Technic. Either one. You can select them, try them, you can buy both, play with them, see what you get a better response.
This is a 2D drawing, is there any depth to it? Is it going to be recessed in or
That can fit right on top.
Say that again? Well, hold on, let me bring the drawing up. You have to look at both of them together, right? So,
Yeah, this is side.
so if you're looking at it here,
Yeah.
okay, so this is a diagonal 2x4 running across, raised up in the air. And then the buckets hang down from that in that fashion. So you have, so this will be, this dimension is, the upper dimension is really irrelevant, this could be whatever. The dimension that you're concerned about is this bottom of this bucket is going to be 2 feet off the playing surface. That's the critical dimension here. And then you have the 2 foot center to center on the buckets.
And the buckets will be right on that diagonal line.
The buckets will be centered right on that 2x4 going across there. You should have plenty of room to maneuver in and around that area.
Can you take off the container off your robot during the process of, let's say during the heat, load up some bolts, then place it back on?
You could do that, but I don't know why you would want to, but you could do that. There's not going to be any prohibition from that, but you're going to have that piece of your robot, you know, it's got to be part of your robot, you know, if that's what you want to do. Any other questions? Yes?
So we can have an external flashlight that's on?
I will look into that, and I will let everyone know what that can be, but I don't see a reason why we can't come up with some light source for that.
I was gonna say either that or you gotta put like an LED strip underneath it.
Right, we
Flash
can,
up into it so we can see. Because the sensors are wonky that way.
we can come up with something.
They need ambient light. And they can get confused with the ceiling. too.
Not if they're inside the bucket, they won't.
No, they have to be inside the bucket.
Yeah, I mean, they have to be looking at the color. Any other questions? We can always come back to this, but if there's anything immediately. Okay, seeing none, we will move on to the farming challenge. Okay, so in the farming challenge, we're going to basically have a garden, a planting area, which will be basically a large sand pit. You do not have to go into the sand pit. We don't encourage you to go into the sand pit. If you want to climb up and try to go into the sand pit, you're more than welcome. But I hate to see you get stuck in there or damage yourself on that. But there's no restriction if that's how you choose to operate. There'll be, we have 3 different size plants for you to choose from. We have a large, and a small, and a medium. So they will be lined up on the court, and your robot will be required to travel, pick these up, and plant them basically in the sand. The concept here, it is our intention that the plants be planted in the same upright manner as they sit on the ground. However, we know there is challenges with that. And we will accept plants that are not in an upright position as long as there is an attempt to dig a hole, place the plant in the hole, and cover it back up. Each plant has each plant container has a line on it that you can see. For instance, on this one, there's a black line. And that will be the determining factor as to whether the plant is planted or not. That black line would need to be covered. So you make an attempt to move some sand out of the way, you come, you put this in that hole, it may tip over, okay? You can make the attempt to stand it up, or you can make the attempt to cover it back up as it were, or if it's tilted based on, you know, the hole, that's fine. Again, you've got to get the sand over and hide the black line so that the official taking a look around the plant does not see that line. So we have some points here. So first off, the robot comes out to the court and he's able to pick up any plant. So that right off the bat will earn you 50 points. That's a one-time per heat event. It doesn't multiply if you stand there picking up and putting down plants. You're able to pick up one plant, get it off the floor with the robot, you receive 50 points. At the end of the heat, any plant that is in the planter, basically transferred from the floor into the planter, will get 25 points regardless of whether or not they are planted. And then, assuming you do plant plants, 200 points for the small plants, 300 points for the medium plants, and 400 points for the large plants. Court layout is pretty basic. We'll have 9 sets of each of the plants. There will be a 3-foot by 12-foot planting area off to the left side of the court. And that planting area basically will look like that. It'll be constructed out of 2 by 12 lumber, which basically will yield us an 11.5-inch sidewall. And we will adjust that to make it so if needed. And then we will have play sand in that planting area, and that play sand will be kept about 2 inches below the top of that. And of course, after each event, we will rake or screed that area to make it flat again for the next heat. Any questions on the farming challenge? Yes.
So if you were to take a, so let's say the small plant, put it in the planter, and then you just, after you've created a small hole, and then cover the entire plant with sand, so that you can't even see the plant, that plant is considered planted.
Yes.
So basically burying, like completely burying it counts as planted.
Yes.
It's when it's partially buried that it wouldn't be counted.
Correct. Or at least just partially below the black line. You know, if the sand comes up to, close, but I still see the rim on the top, that's fine because you've covered the black line. But if you put this in the hole and you put the sand back up to here, that's not going to be considered planted because you didn't cover the black line. However, because you were able to successfully move the plant to the planting area, you did receive points for that. That'll be the 25 at the end. Yes?
For each moving or just on one?
Okay, so you get the first plant that you are able to successfully pick up, you get 50 points for. Okay, that's a one-time point per heat, one time. So the first plant you pick up, you earn 50 points. Every plant at the end of the heats are 6 minutes long. When the official says, time up, time's up, and we look in the planter and you have 4 plants in there, whether they're covered or not, those 4 plants each earn the 25 points. So at that point, you have 150 points. 4 times 25 plus the original 50. Now, if any of those 4 plants are considered planted, depending on the size, you will either earn an additional 200, 300, or 400 points based on the size of that plant. Yes?
Would each plant need to have its own hole, or would it be possible, say, if you made the hole large enough, you put 2 plants in one hole?
That's a good question. I would say that each plant should have its own hole for the purpose of this competition for performing, robotics dexterity. I would say each plant should have its own hole.
Okay. Is there any space between each hole that
No.
there needs to be? Okay.
No, randomly throughout the planter area.
So you're using sand?
I'm sorry?
So you're using sand?
Yes, play sand.
Because if you would.
Dry, clean, play sand will be in there. Any other questions on the farming challenge? Yes.
Are you allowed to pick up more than one plant at a time, or it has to be one at a
No,
time?
you can try to pick up more than one plant at a time, sure.
Almost had our game-winning technique with just putting multiple plants in one hole.
There you go. Okay, obstacle course, for those who are new, basically, we create a large oval-like track in the gymnasium. It has boundaries. You must stay within the boundaries. If you exit the boundaries, the heat is stopped. We typically give points for every 25 feet. I'm sorry, not 25 feet. We give 25 points for every quarter of the track that is traveled. So if you don't finish, but yet you've made it a little more than halfway around, you can still earn 25 points. And then typically, we don't design this until we get a sense of what the robot's capabilities are on the first day of competition, because we don't want to make something that we can't really use on the second day of competition. So once we get a sense of the robot's abilities on the first days, we then lay out the track with several obstacles or just different ways of traveling the course in order to create the challenge. Any questions on the obstacle course? Pretty straightforward, especially those who've been here.
Can we not have a 360 this year?
Can we not have a 360 this year? Anything's possible.
I just asked because, you know, we did the rack and pinion last year, and we were, it was physically impossible for our robot to make a 360.
Well, if you recall in last year's competition, the robot was required in one of the events to do a 360. So that's why there was a 360 in the obstacle course. So it's a good possibility that in the obstacle course, you may have to, pick up a piece of medicine. You may have to move a bucket. You may have to pick up a plant or something like that. Because usually somewhere along the obstacle course, we try to incorporate at least one of the activities from the prior day. So that's why the 360 was most likely incorporated, because it was something that the robots were doing the day before in one of the heats, one of the events. In the event of an overall tiebreaker for the competition champion, we will have the teams involved rerun the obstacle course, and whoever has the best time or makes it the furthest, assuming they don't both finish, will get the leg up and be considered the champion. Rules, lots of rules. For the teams that are new, I would advise you to read them carefully, and by all means ask Tom or myself anything that you may not understand. I don't think I need to read through them. There are pit rules. Basically, the main thing here is that we do ask the advisors to responsibly manage their teams within the pits and keep that area under control. Again, this year, we have the possibility of maybe our most teams ever. We've got a lot of interest in the competition this year. Usually we're around 10 teams, give or take. We may be upwards of 15 teams this year, depending upon what happens as the months go by. So if that does occur, we are going to, really rely on the advisors to keep their pits in order. Again, scoring. You'll have 3 runs at the Pharmacist Challenge. We take your high score. You have 3 runs at the Farming Challenge. We take your high score. You have 3 runs at the Obstacle Course. We take your high score. And those in their respective areas become ranked against the other team's high scores. Specifications, number 3 and number 1 are probably the most important, which is that 1, you have to use what's listed in the manual. So do not bring a robot that does not meet those size characteristics or has something that's not listed in the manual or is a authorized Tetrix part, because the, let's say if we do have 15 schools, the 14 other students that are looking at your robot under what we call peer review or team review, they will catch it, they will find it, they will measure it, they will double measure it, they will triple measure it, they'll check wire thickness, you name it, they know it. They've spent 2.5, 3 months building their robot, they know what to look for, and if you have a part that doesn't belong, you're going to be asked to replace it. Sometimes it's easy. Sometimes, you know, we just put the wire tie in the wrong place because we were running late and I should have put a screw in there, but I put a wire tie instead, so you have to change that. Sometimes your chassis is the wrong size. That becomes very difficult to change. So we don't want to disqualify you. So please, especially for the new teams, follow these dimensions, follow these rules. Any questions, I tell all the teams, any questions come up, any possibility of a of changing one item for another, you gotta ask us, because if we can allow it, we'll allow it. If we can't, we can't. And again, if we allow something for one team, we have to allow it for the other, all the teams, which we have done. But again, you don't want to show up on the day before competition for team review and have your robot disqualified. Okay, remote operations, progress reports. Okay, here's another big issue, progress reports. So, a couple years back, maybe 3 years now, we were seeing a lot of issues with teams that apparently didn't do a lot for a variety of reasons for the first couple of weeks, and then at the very end really worked hard to try and put something together and not always did the right thing. So we came up with a way to try and make sure that teams are diligently working on this in a nice progressive fashion. So we've instituted progress reports, which are approximately 20 days apart, give or take. It's not a perfect number, but it's close to 20 days apart. Teams must submit a 200 to 300 word narrative telling us what they're working on and what they did, why they did it, how they figured things out to the point that they were at, and 5 photos, the right side, the left side, the front, the back, and the top of the actual robot that they are working on for the competition. Lack of a proper written narrative or demonstrated progress is considered the same as failing to submit the report. So if you fail to submit the report, we deduct 100 points off of each heat during the competition. Again, this is an educational competition designed to get students educated and interested in robotics, science, technology, math, engineering, physics, you name it. So we want to see that in these reports. We want to see that we're moving forward, that we're not waiting till 3 weeks before the competition, grabbing a bunch of students and trying to put something together.
Make sure you indicate which team you are too. Sometimes we get these things and they're not even, especially if one of the students is using their own email and the email is not really associated with any sort of particular college. We don't know where the report's coming from.
Right, and we recommend that you submit the report a day ahead of time because again, the day after is late, doesn't count. submit it a day ahead of time and follow that up with a regular email. We've had issues sometimes with the size of the document, okay, depending upon how, you know, some people send a nice, neat, formatted PDF, you know, Adobe Reader PDF, and it comes across very nicely. Other people send scattered of all these pictures, which sometimes gets clogged in email servers and things like that. So again, follow that up the next day. Regardless of which way you send it, we encourage you to follow it up the next day with a regular email just asking, you know, did you get our email, just so we know that we got it. We typically do send an email when we receive it, that we have received it. So that's the second thing. If you don't get that email back that we've received it, that can be an issue. Sometimes that's also an issue if the students are sending it from their private accounts. But again, that's follow-up email just to make sure, because these are easy points to lose, and we don't really want you to lose them, but we do take them away if you don't comply. Mentioned briefly, team review. So what happens is, on the Monday evening, at the end of the day, Monday evening, before the first day of competition, which is a Tuesday, and we'll review the schedule at the end of the presentation.